it's Dorothy Guiney with Scrapbooking Quebec. Happy National Scrapbooking Day weekend. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, kicking off the Scrapbook Nerds online event for 2021. We have tons of challenges, prizes, inspiration all over on our Facebook page, Scrapbook Nerd Friends Group. So be sure to head on over there for more information, and I'll put a link to that group in the description box below. And here's what I'm going to be doing. The page you see on the screen, super quick and easy, and it's associated with my challenge, which is called Fresh Start. The idea here is to dig into your latest scrappy purchase and create something. Here's my latest scrappy purchase. It's the Carefree collection from Heidi Swapp, and I got all of this at the Scrapbook Nerd Online Shop. So I'll link up the shop as well as everything I use in the description box below as well. Now on my desk, I did very little preparation. You're going to see I have two photos that I double matted. That's it. But I do want to talk about paper selection here. I start about 90% of my projects with Basil Marshmallow White cardstock because it's heavy duty, super sturdy. As for paper selection, there is two things that I keep in mind. Number one, colors, of course. Now, these are photos of me on a beach taking photos in the spring. So the blues and the beige and the pinks, all of that can be found in the photos. But what I find more important is the mood of my story. Basically, this is a Zen moment for me. It's quite relaxing. I'm basically unplugging. So I want to select paper and material that reflects that mood. And I think this paper does. I wouldn't want something super energetic with arrows or stuff like that. I want it to be peaceful, to convey the message of a relaxing Zen moment. And Heidi Swapp is great for that. Anyway, what I'm going to do right now is start preparing my foundation page. And I'm going to be starting with that striped paper, which I think is my absolute favorite in this collection. It has all of the colors of the collection. So I just cut myself down a 1-inch strip of paper, and what I'm going to do is just adhere it behind my foundation page so that it peeks out about a 1/2 inch. And then what I'm going to do is trim down that entire page so that it measures 12 by 12, because by adding that 1/2 inch, obviously I made my page bigger. I want to point out that when I put measurements on the screen, it is for visible page parts. So for that narrow strip, for example, I cut it at 1 inch, but what you see on the screen is a 1/2 inch. So keep that in mind. I do a lot of tucking when I adhere things together. Now what you see me doing is creating a large border for the left-hand side of the page. So I'm doing that in 3 different papers. And again, keep in mind the measurements are for visible page parts. That blue strip there is written at 1/8 of an inch, but I cut it at 1 inch because I had to adhere it behind that striped paper. Same thing for that watercolor pinkish paper as well. It's larger than what is written on the screen. So now I have a border there, and that border essentially measures about 4.5 inches altogether width. So I'm going to adhere that to the page, and I'm going to continue playing with those stripes, and you'll see that in a moment. What I'm going to do is I have a 6-inch piece of paper there, and I'm going to cut it down. I'm just going to have some fun with it. What I'm trying to cut out here are the solid colors. If you notice on that paper, there's like a little white sketchy line in between each color. Essentially, I'm eliminating that. And these are not exact sizes. I'm just eyeballing it, eliminating that white sketchy line between each color. So I have a handful of strips of paper. My plan is to place them on the page on a horizontal line, what you see me doing right there, right now. And what I'm also going to do is, actually I've got to wait a minute. I think what I end up doing, you're going to see, is I end up applying some ink underneath these strips of paper. But I also end up adding some stitching as well. And when I'm doing this voiceover, I forget exactly the order in which I did it. I know what I'm going to do right now, the stitching. Often when I work with strips of paper, I do like to add stitching. Now, I don't have a sewing machine in my scrap room, so I'm adding some faux stitching. This is a template, an old retired template from Stampin' Up. It has little holes in it, so what I'm doing is poking holes with a paper piercing tool, and there's like this spongy mat underneath. And then what I'm going to do is join the holes together with a fine tip marker, and it gives the look of stitching. So I did that with all of them, and I also ripped the ends of each one of those strips, and it's here where I'm getting out my ink. So I have a Stampin' Up ink, I think it's called Misty Moonlight. I tested on a little piece of scrap paper first, and what I'm doing is just applying it on that white basil marshmallow cardstock underneath the area where those strips of paper will be adhered, also where my photos and eventually my journaling box will go. To be perfectly honest, when this project is done, you really don't see it. So I probably could have applied a bit more. But again, I'm just playing here, and that's all part of the process. So you can kind of see how I'm placing them. Essentially, the shortest pieces are going to be at the top and at the bottom. And as I adhere them, they're gradually going to get longer towards the middle. I also took a pencil and just made a mark at the top and at the bottom where I'm hoping those stripes will start and end. So I'm adhering them. I'm bringing in my T-square every once in a while just to make sure it's straight. Now at this point I had no plans to adhere the white stripe, the one that's at the top of that striped paper, just because I didn't think it would have much of an effect on the page, and the bottom one as well, which is a dark charcoal gray. But you're going to notice I end up adhering that charcoal one after all, simply because I think I'm adhering these strips a little closer than what my original intention was. So I'm going to place my photos here, and I'm going to notice that I don't actually have enough of them there to house all my photos. So that's why I come in with the gray one, and I'm going to put that there, and then I'll be done with the stripes. Now at this point I do want a journaling box. And that striped paper that I've been working so much with, the flip side of it is a ledger paper. So I'm going to cut myself down a strip, then I'm going to get out my Big Shot, and I'm going to get out a die that I often use from Elizabeth Craft Designs. It's one of her Planner Essential series dies. It's a planner page, and I'm going to cut that out in the ledger paper. That's going to act as a layer for my photos, but it's also going to be a place where I can do my journaling as well, and there are lines on it, so that's perfect. That's what you see me placing here right now. Now what I don't want to do is cover up all of those stripes that I put down, because I do quite like them. So I'm playing around a bit with placement here, and as you can see I have all of my embellishing all around me. So what I'm going to do is create a visual triangle, your classic visual triangle on a page, and I'm starting with 3 blue pieces. So you saw me right now, I just tucked in a long piece. It's got the months of the year, and I have that kind of underneath the white paper in the top right. I actually quite like it. It's very subtle, but it's there. I have that circular piece at the bottom left that says love moments like this, and then also in blue a little label that says next stop at the top left. So I've got a visual triangle established with the blue, then I came in with a gold piece, tucked it in the top left. That means I know I'm going to want gold elsewhere on the page. Also, the white that is in that cluster in the top left made it so that I wanted some white in that cluster in the bottom left. That's why I went and got that tag. So you see at the bottom there, I've got a tag, the white one, the circular piece, and the gold piece. And all of that is repeated, those colors, not necessarily the shapes, in that cluster in the top left. Now at this point, I'm deciding that circular blue tag at the bottom, I want that to be my title. But if I want it to be my title, I want to put a little bit more emphasis on that ephemera piece. I don't want it to be like every other ephemera piece. So you see I have 2 circles there, larger white circles. I cut those with my Big Shot off screen. One of them is in white cardstock, the other one is in that ledger paper, the same one that's in the planner page. I decide to go with the one with the ledger paper, so it just adds a bit more emphasis to that, and I'm going to work more on that as well, just so that it stands out more as a title. I am really kind of fussing around a lot, especially with that cluster at the bottom left. I'm not really happy with it actually. I also want to point out as well, when I create a page with a visual triangle, three kind of clusters, your classic visual triangle, I do like to have each cluster house a different visual weight. You're going to see here at the bottom left, it's going to be the biggest embellishment cluster. Then the top left, a little bit smaller, and then the top right, it's going to be almost non-existent, but there is going to be a repetition up there as well. I just find that makes more of an interesting page when they all have different visual weights. And I do try to repeat something in each one of those clusters. So I've sped up the film here and I'm just adhering everything down to the page, because even though I'm not quite sure how I'm going to finish my page at this point, especially that cluster in the bottom left, at one point I just have to adhere pieces to the page, because when everything is loose, it's like I can't see the next step. So at this point, I adhered my photos, my journaling spot, the cluster in the top left, that tab in the top right, and now I'm working on that cluster in the bottom left where my title's going to go. So I ended up backing that circle, the ledger paper circle, in that other circle just to make it a little bit more sturdy. I had cut them out anyway, so what the heck, it was just a piece of plain white cardstock. And I'm also going to adhere that gold circle, kind of overlapping that ledger circle there. But what I'm doing is adding a piece of foam adhesive there, simply because that large circle was already raised up with an extra piece of cardstock, it kind of bumped it up a bit. So if I wanted that gold circle to be flush with that ledger paper circle, I had to add a bit of foam adhesive, otherwise it would have bent. I also added foam adhesive to that blue circle with my title on it that says Love Moments Like This. And I did that because I'm trying to kind of beef up that title just so that it looks more like a title. Now what I want to do is add a reinforcer to that blue circle, because it is a tag. It's got a little hole there. So I took a hole punch and a 1/2-inch circle punch, and I just punched myself out a little ring from that yellow stripe in that striped paper, and I'm happy with that. And I'm looking for twine. Now I'm kind of liking the gold flecks, but I end up going with the charcoal colored twine, and I did that because all of my faux stitching was in blue, no, sorry, was in a charcoal gray. So I wanted it to match the faux thread, so to speak, in the faux stitching. So I have that there, and I ending up right now, oh, I do want to create a visual triangle with the gold. I hadn't repeated that gold in a third spot. So in the ephemera, there was a little heart, and I put that in the tab of the planner page, and I'm happy with that. I'm coming in with a little piece of vellum there, and it says Living Up the Weekend, and it's kind of overlapping the photo. And again, all I'm doing is really beefing up that embellishment cluster, my main one, around that photo at the bottom. So I'm happy with that. I ended up adding a little enamel dot in the tag in that cluster in the bottom. And the only thing I did off camera, aside from my journaling, is I did add a bit of faux stitching to that label on top of the photo in the top left. And you're not really going to be able to see it, but there is some faux stitching along that piece of ephemera in the top right, just on the blue there. But that's it. Anyway, a quick and simple page. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the Scrapbook Nerd YouTube channel, we would be absolutely thrilled if you did. We usually have several videos throughout the month. Also, my channel, Scrapbooking Quebec. Don't forget to head on over to the Facebook group, Scrapbook Nerd Friends Group, for more information about the National Scrapbooking Day weekend events. Thank you so much for watching, and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.